Welcome to episode number 21 of Patriot to the Core podcast. I'm Thad Forrester, and I really thank you for listening again this week. Our guest is a World War II veteran. He's also a POW, Mr. Stan Staheli. He was only 18 years old when he was drafted, and then a year later he found himself a member of Patton's 3rd Army in the 4th Armored Division, liberating France from the Nazis. And so this is where he was captured by the Germans in 1944, and he was a POW for 5 months. He spent Christmas of 1944 in what he called a castle prison. He could actually see and hear, the townspeople and the children out shopping for Christmas and playing in the snow and just out and about. And so, of course, it caused him to reflect a little bit on home and his family, and if they knew where he was, if they knew that he was alive. He was officially missing in action, but he said his mother never gave up hope. She believed he was alive, and he was able to finally make it home and surprise them. They weren't expecting him when he came back, but he surprised them one early Sunday morning. He has really quite the posterity now. He and his wife had 10 children. They have 53 grandchildren as of now, and 60 plus great grandchildren. So he's just a very pleasant guy, very positive, and he was a trooper for this interview. I mean, he held up. We went longer than I anticipated, and I really appreciated his time. So let me bring on Stan now. Well, Mr. Staheli, it's an honor to have you with me today. I appreciate you joining me on Patriot to the Core, and I just wanted to start first and just say and ask you, what circumstances led to you joining the Army, and in what year was that?
I joined the Army in 1943, in December, 1st of December, 1943. I was 18 years old, and I was drafted.
Okay.
I didn't volunteer. I was just drafted at the Army.
Did you have an inkling that you were going to be drafted?
Oh, yes. I had an inkling, and my brother, just 2 years older than I, had been rejected because he had Bright's disease when he was a kid, and he was rejected. He had kidney trouble. And so I just prayed that that I would be healthy enough to make it through, which I was. I didn't have any ailments of any kind.
So what kind of warning did you have? When you were drafted, how long did you have until you reported to the Army?
It was 20th of November when I was notified of my induction, and then till I think it was the 2nd of December that they actually called us and we boarded the bus.
Okay, yes, so not long at all.
Yeah, not very long.
Wow, less than 2 weeks sounds like.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Staheli, I'd like to fast forward a little bit to your time in Germany in the war, and by the way, I was introduced to you because I read an article about you being a POW during Christmas time, and I forgot what year that was. But will you just share with us, how you were, what led up to you being captured, and then we'll talk about your time as a POW.
Yes, we'd made the dash across France. I was in the Patton's 3rd Army, and then General Wood's 4th Armored Division. I was a replacement. I wasn't a member of the old unit because I was too young, but I was the replacement in France in 1st of August. So D-Day had just passed. Of course, the signs of the war, And the invasion there on Normandy was all very fresh still. But to join the unit there, and we dashed across France. The 4th Armored Division was the spearhead division of the 3rd Army that made that dash. I think it was 72 days that took us to go all the way across, liberate France. But in a little town called Rimsdorf over in the Saar Valley, we had just taken a town called Rimsdorf. And as we took the town, it was all ablaze because we thought it was our shells and doings. But I learned when I went back in 2007 and talked to the people that were there then, and they said that the Germans set the town on fire before they withdrew. And they withdrew from the town that day on the 2nd of December, just a year after I'd been inducted and was there in the war. The Germans withdrew out of that town as we took the town, and then 4 of us, one from each squad, was sent up to the edge of the forest where the Germans had gone into the forest. And we were supposed to set up a listening post situation so we could tell the strength somewhat of their forces in that forest, the liberating forest. And so we set up our outpost there just on the edge of the forest because we knew the Germans were behind the trees just in the forest. So during the early morning hours, it was a Sunday morning, December the 3rd, 1944, when the Germans counterattacked. We had seen 9 Tiger tanks go into them as we took the town, and they backed off into the forest. So we knew they had a sizable force back in there. And they did counterattack that morning, and of course overran our little outpost. And our forces down in the valley were awake and sat there and watched them take us because they said they were afraid if they fired on us that we'd get killed. So rather than fire, they just let the Germans take it. So that's how I got captured.
Well, how did they overrun y'all, I guess, when you had driven them out of town earlier? What happened? Did you have some of our forces leave?
No.
What happened?
The circumstances were simply that we were right up to the edge of their lines, the 4 of us. And there was a great big bare pasture area between us and our forces down in the bottom of the valley. And our forces were sufficient. Had we not been there, we could have repulsed that counterattack. But because we were there, my squad leader was from East Palestine, Ohio. And he came out west here to meet me and visit with me after the war. He said that they were all ready. We had our tanks and half-tracks with 50 calibers mounted on them and all kinds of armory, and then we had the guys behind us with the mortars and everything, you know. But they were, I don't know, there was a spirit of camaraderie that you just didn't kill your own soldiers.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing we could do. We could counter the attack, and there was no place for us to go or maneuver in any way. We right out in an open pasture just before you got into the forest. And when they lined up at the edge of that forest and zeroed in on our unit there, outpost, there was no place for us to go. There was another factor under him that made me know before we went up there that we'd never get back. We'd either be killed or captured or something, because the lights from the burning town down below us and back of us lit up that whole hillside, and the Germans were up there in the dark in that forest looking right down at us.
I see.
They knew where we were,
mm-hmm.
So they knew where to concentrate their efforts before they bypassed us then and went on down in. The big final battle for France was fought on the third, that day that we were captured, and the next day that ended the French part of the war. Then it was shortly after that the Third Army was called back up to rescue the Baston and the 101st Airborne people that were tied up in there.
So the Germans capture you, and then how many did they capture?
4 of us. The 4 of us.
So what did they do, and what did they tell you?
The first words out of the mouth of one that was talking said in perfect English, "The war's over for you." And we thought that we were all going to be shot right there. But the next words out of his mouth was, he said, and he looked at my dog tag, and it had Staheli written on it, which is a Swiss-German name. And he said, "You're German." He said, "Why are you here fighting me?" Fighting us. And that was the first words out of their mouth. And then they forbid us to talk to each other. And just, we were 3 days getting from Rimsdorf across the Rhine River up to Frankfurt, where the castle was.
So you walked 3 days, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Mostly a hot dog. Because they just expose us very much.
So I'm curious now, I mean, did you see or feel a lot of hatred, in their eyes and in their voice? And then how did they treat you?
That's the marvel of it all, and why I have the feelings about war that I do, is because they were very, very refined, very, if I'd have been on the edge of my country and seen what the enemy was doing with the bombers and everything, I think I'd have been a lot more mean than they appeared to be. I never saw the hatred in their eyes.
Okay.
Their countenances. So,
Well, sorry, go ahead.
As a matter of fact, in the prison camp later on and through the winter, the boys that guarded us, our guards, were disabled soldiers off the front lines. And when the big shots, the Gestapo agents, weren't in view, were out of sight, they used to motion us over behind boxcars and pull out their wallets, show us pictures of their families and all those kinds of things.
So how were you treated? In the camp overall?
Overall, I guess from my point of view, I've always told my family that they kept me alive, and I wasn't beaten or I wasn't treated harshly, but very firmly. They made it clear that their famous words were "Nix Arbeit, nix Ess," which meant you don't work, you don't eat. And growing up through the Depression here in Enterprise, Utah, I learned that if you didn't work, you didn't eat, because there were no handouts in those days. There was just you had to grub it out, whatever you could grub out.
So what kind of work did you do?
Well, my dad was a rancher and farmer. We had cattle and horses, and I grew up with cattle and horses, raising feed to feed. And had a little dairy herd that we got a little milk and cream from that we shipped out and got a few dollars once a week. Had a little bunch of chickens that I gathered a few eggs and sold, traded to the stores. I think it was about the same as every place in the country. You know.
Well, what kind of work did you do as a prisoner?
We were sent out, 75 of us were sent out of the big main Stalag, which was 4B, but 75 of us were sent down to a rail center and put toward digging and building bomb shelters for the workers. And also when the bombers started coming in, the Lend-Lease bombers manned by Russians started coming in and bombing, and they ended up putting us on the railroad, mending railroad, replacing ties and rails and stuff like that.
So you said you were never beaten and you were treated pretty well, but is it true that I know it seems like you were cold, and did they take your clothes from you quite often?
Every night, and the weather was colder than Enterprise, and it was 0 degrees here the last 2 or 3 nights. And it was colder than that there in that camp where we were. And every night, just about this time of night, by I guess a little later in your country, but just about dark, when they'd bring us in, we'd have to strip off all of our clothes, and they hung them on hangers, and we had to take them down to the end of a little wooden barracks, and they locked them in a room down there. And we'd go down about daylight in the morning and pick them up. So, talk about cold. Yeah, I know what cold is.
So what did you sleep on, and did you have anything to cover up with?
Each one of us had a little light blanket. Just a little, like the little throw blankets you throw for comfort in your house. And two of us, we were in bunk beds, and two of us slept together in a little single bunk. But one of us would put a blanket on the bottom and one over the top. That's all we had. There was a big pot-bellied coal or wood-burning stove in the middle of the room, but there was no fuel for it, so we had no heat. It was just a little shiplap lumber building without any insulation in it, without any what we call sheetrock or anything on the inside, just the lumber outside. And on the 13th of February, the alarm sounded for air raid, and they came and kicked us out of the barracks and out into slit trenches full of snow in the back. And there we waited till the airplanes all went out of beyond the radar or whatever it was, and the all clear sounded, and then we'd go back into the barracks, get in our little blankets, and just about the time we got settled down a little bit, the air raid sirens would sound again. The airplanes had dropped their load and then turned around and were headed back. So we went over, and for 3 nights that lasted, and I've learned since in my studies that they were bombing Dresden, and if you've done any study of the war on the Eastern Front, you'll learn about the destruction of Dresden, Germany.
Yeah.
But it was only 40 miles where I camped.
Okay. So, Mr. Staheli, when you're laying there at night, did you lay there and think much and ponder about, what a predicament you were in, what your family was doing, or were you just so exhausted that you slept when you laid down?
We slept when we quit shivering, but I don't recall ever worrying very much about the family or about things at home. My only worry in that regard was that I was alive and my folks back home probably didn't even know it. That my mother might be mourning my death and my siblings, my family, but I was still alive.
So did they think that you were, at that point, were you officially missing?
I was missing in action. The War Department issued and my captain received my mail, and he just wrote a big deceased up across the front of that letter and returned it to my mother. And so everybody thought that I was dead.
Oh, no.
Mother. But my mother had told me, she said, I'll never accept anything except you come home whole and physically fit, like the Lord told you in your Patriarch of Blessed. So just while I was home on furlough before I shipped overseas, I had that blessing. And that was one of the things I was told, that is, if I would go believing that I'd return home whole and physically fit.
So your mom wasn't going to doubt until she saw a body. So she was a pretty faithful lady.
She was faithful. That mother of mine, she lived by her faith. She had an old saying, she says, as your faith is, so shall it be.
Yeah. Well, bless her heart. I mean, I can't imagine, just getting that news and either thinking and people telling you that your son has been killed or he's missing in action, either one, it would still be devastating. Even without accepting it, it would be awful wondering, where's my little boy at? What's he going through? Mr. Staheli, sorry, go ahead.
My mom also said, if anybody don't make it, Stan will. She just knew my nature, and she had faith in me too.
Yeah. So what happened? You said 4 of you were captured. So where was the rest of was everyone else killed?
No, the rest of them, we had all parked right down in that little area. All of our tanks and half-trash vehicles, all of us were parked down in the bottom of that all of their little towns are down in the bottom. And then their little farmland and pastures are up on hillside slopes. And we had taken the town and parked our vehicles for the night down there. And then we walked up the hill to the forest where we set up our outpost, the 4 of us. And the battle that ensued after they captured us, at least when they captured us, they stirred up our troops to where they were awake and alert. And there was a battle for that day and the next day. And our troops were not killed. There's a big, beautiful plaque on a big rock. That's our Union, just a few blocks away from Rimsdorf, where it tells about the liberation of France on the 4th day of December. And I have a picture standing there with my finger pointed to that date on that flag.
When did you do that? When did you take that picture?
That was taken in 2007 when I went back to Germany and to France and to Switzerland. Retraced right there the old gun emplacement where we set up our outpost was right on the edge of that forest. It was a big concrete structure. The Germans had a 20 millimeter gun on it, which overlapped the town when we were coming in to take the town. They took the gun, but the old monument, or the old concrete structure was still there, and it was still there 63 years later in 2007 when we went back there. I took my wife and some of the family that was with us up to that monument, or up to that gun emplacement, and showed them right where I dug my last footstool. Because the old concrete thing is still there.
Amazing.
The old gun emplacement. Yeah.
So what kind of feelings did that stir up when you were there in 2007?
Well, I'll tell you mixed. But there was a guy in Rimsdorf. He had the bread and breakfast unit that we had planned to stay at before we even left home. Had it all mapped out, planned out. When we went there to that place and registered in, they took us up to a little room, and I looked out the window and I said to my wife, I can see the place where I was standing when the Germans overran our outpost. It was right out and up the hill from the window to our bedroom.
Wow.
And that place we had rented for the night there. But the people there just treated us royally. There was a guy there from the German army, there was a guy there from the French army, and me from America. All right there together. And one from France, the French boy, he was just my age, and he remembered the war. And he took me in his car. He says, you people can follow me in your car if you want, but I'm going to take this guy, and we're going to go around to all the battlefields and points where he fought and was, which we did, and he did. And they treated us royals. You come to realize when you get this insight into war and into people's lives that war is devilish and is instituted by devils and these imps to a great extent. There are those few exceptions, like the War for Independence and that. But most wars you contrive to kill and destroy and tear down. Yeah.
So, Mr. Staheli, how long were you a POW?
Well, I was a POW from December the 3rd, 1944 till May the 6th, 1945. A little over 5 months. All the way through what the Germans said was the coldest recorded history in Germany.
Whoa.
That happened to be that one.
So how did you find out that you were being released?
We were out on the job doing our regular work, and some big officials with their armbands and black dressed in black with their armbands and everything. High officials came out and jabbered back and forth in German. We didn't learn too much German, only the commands toward us. But we understood enough to know that it had to do with the ending of the war. And right after they left, they rounded us up. It was about 10 o'clock, 11 in the morning, before dinner time, lunchtime. And they took us back into the stockade and left the gate open. And they went into a big storeroom and got out a Red Cross food package, a 10-pound package, which they were supposed to have given us one of those every week. That was according to the Geneva Convention. However, we only got that one that they gave us when the war was over. So they opened the gate and they said, "Your troops are down that way," and pointed down toward Prague, Czechoslovakia. And they didn't tell us how far or anything else. And they said, "You can either stay here and wait for your troops to come, or you can leave and find them." And there were 4 of us again that took our little Red Cross packages and walked out that gate and headed south.
Was there any part of you that didn't trust them?
What?
Was there any part of you that didn't trust the Germans and you thought they may try to kill you if you left?
No. But I always felt that the Germans knew that they were going to lose the war from all through the time I was there, and that they knew that their consequences would be worse if they harmed us and if they treated us decently. It was one thing I thought in my mind. And another one was that I, being of German descent myself, I knew that people are pretty decent. And I learned from the war that wars are perpetuated by leaders, not by the common people.
Yeah.
Common people are just like we are. I conveyed that idea in that little story you read, that those people are like us. I mean, just the people. But leaders perpetuate all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, good point. So when did your family find out? When did they find out you were alive? And, when did you talk to them? And how did that come about?
Well, we had no media like we've got today. I wrote a letter after I got back to our unit, back to American lines. I was on the French coast for a month, recuperating from a prisoner of war experience. During that month, I wrote quite often to them, but I never told them anything about coming home. I got it in my mind that I just wanted to walk up to the doorstep and open the door at home. And I made it clear to Cedar City, which is 45 miles to the east of us here, on a bus before I finally ended up on a Sunday morning over there. There wasn't an automobile on the streets nor a person inside. And I went into a little restaurant there that was open and called home, and we only had one telephone in Enterprise, and so the people had to get out of bed, go to my house, tell them that I was in Cedar City and I needed a way home. But I felt bad that I couldn't make it all the way home without a phone. But they didn't know that I was even in the U.S. of A.
Oh, yeah.
And I made it almost home.
So what was that reunion like?
Well, I think that's one of the things that would be hard to describe. We were raised up different back in those days. I mean, we didn't have a lovey-dovey kind of relationship. Families were solid, but not just soft, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In the Depression days, the best thing a dad could do for you is to hand you a full-grown, full-size shovel or pitchfork and make you feel like you're a man when you're about 8 or 10 years old.
Hmm.
I almost worshiped my dad. He was an old cowboy. He had cattle and things when he was still single. And so he was just my ideal wife. I didn't think there was anybody like him, so I think taking a hold of his hand, you didn't hug and show emotion that way like we do today. I just took a hold of his old hand on the sidewalk in Cedar City when they came over to pick me up. And I'll never forget grasping his hand. And his hands were working hands.
Mm-hmm.
They were rough.
They were calloused.
They were calloused, yeah. Yeah.
Well, did you have your uniform on?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. Wow, what a sight, I'm sure. Well, Mr. Staheli, what advice do you... sorry, did you want to go ahead and... Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead with the question.
What's some of the advice that you give your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren now?
No, what's the question? What?
Like, what kind of advice do you give your posterity now? You know, it could be related to anything. I mean, I know it's a broad question.
Well, I must have given them something good because I've got 9 children, 8 living though I've lost 2. I had 10. I've got 53 grandchildren and over 60 great-grandchildren. And I haven't got a bad apple in my whole
Wow.
Because, and I don't think it's because of my advice. I've got here during the holidays, people have come from the Mexican border down there, the border guard agent that I'm looking at this picture with me here on my right where I eat my meals, and my kids are just about as good as they come. I was just talking. I just had my son and his family drop in here just before time for this call. And out of Cedar City, they live in Cedar City. And he has a big business there. And David, the one that,
Yeah, the one I talked to.
Yeah. Well, I just talked to him. He was just there. And, and he just was telling me about some connections that he could work out to help me with what you're doing, to get results or whatever, get results of it.
Oh, great.
But in my patriarchal blessing, it told me that the Lord had a mission for me as an elder in Israel, preaching the everlasting gospel to the nations of the earth. And the thing I was going to note about today, you just got back from Argentina on one of his business trips to see how he could open up Argentina's hay country for these machines he builds to process hay. So in South Africa, he's been there, and Australia, and all over the western United States. There he's got these machines, but in Mexico. But the point being that as he sat here, all he did, talking about his trip down there to Argentina, was the wonderful people he met, and the wonderful relation, and how loving and kind people are to one another, how hardworking they are, and those are the ripples that come from advice I gave my kids growing up. I said, don't only work hard, but love to work. Learn to love to work, which every one of them do. And they work their little heads off. And a lot of it's voluntary help to people that are less fortunate.
Yeah.
I've got dental technicians, mechanics.
Well, I think we've got definitely a diminishing population of people who love to work.
I do too, and it's kind of too bad that we've got a socialist system trying to kill that incentive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So,
well, Mr. Staheli, this has been a great pleasure. I know it's not easy for you to talk this long, and I thank you for spending this time with me.
I'm so grateful that my voice has stuck with me as well as it has.
Well, I am too. You told me when we talked yesterday that you weigh, you can still fit into your uniform from World War II, and yeah, your weight is about the same as it was when you were released from the camp. Is that right?
Yep.
How much
is
that?
Maybe 1 pound less. I think I weigh about 118 now.
Okay.
And I weigh 119.
Wow.
So,
well, is there anything in closing that you'd like to say or like to add to this?
My only concluding thought is that I, like Will Rogers used to say, I've never met a man I didn't like. I've never met a person I didn't like. And that it makes it so easy to live by that little law that the Lord gave us, where he said, love thine enemies, do good to those that hate you, and pray for those that despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of Father in heaven. So, and that's the closing. thought.
Well,
if we will love one another as he loves us, people are drawn to love. People aren't inclined to hate and have ill feelings.
Well, that's powerful because because I know you have not harbored ill feelings towards the Germans and the people who captured you and caused you to freeze to death every night and eat, crappy food.
Well, I'll tell you this. My bringing up taught me that you can survive on a little or nothing, but you've got to have love in there. You've got to have the right feelings. I think people are going to the hospitals, to the doctors, and to get medicine for this and that, when a little love would have cured a lot of their ailments. That's just how I simply feel. And I'm 91 now. I can't walk, but I can sure get around, and with the help of all the good people around me, I still love life, still enjoy, and appreciate. Appreciation is probably the key to it all. If we learn to love and appreciate what we have, we're not out worrying about how we can get something else from somebody else. So, whatever you have therewith, be content. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that's great. It's been truly an honor. Thank you for the time. And if you enjoyed this podcast, reviews are always appreciated. So please go to iTunes and give us a rating and write a review. You can also look up show notes at thadforster.com/Stan Staheli, and Staheli is spelled Staheli, or you can just go to patriottothecore.com. Any questions or comments, please email me. I'd love to hear from you, Thad at patriottothecore.com. Until next week, thank you very much for listening.